Greetings gamers, I'm Anto, a bit of a different video for you today. No fancy green screen, no fancy production. I want to take a look at the new Unearthed Arcana because I think there's a lot of exciting things in there, and I think there's also a lot of really telling things for the future of Dungeons and Dragons. So here we are on the Unearthed Arcana page for the Gothic Lineages. Now this is something I had no idea was coming, but I was immediately excited. I love some of the Gothic lineages that we've seen in previous editions, and I've had players play some of those lineages. They're always a lot of fun, so I'm really excited to see what we get in a 5th edition version of those. So we'll go ahead here and open up the actual PDF. As usual, it says that this is playtest material, subject to change, all that good stuff. But inside here, we've got the Dampier, the Hexblood, and the Reborn. Now, one of the things that I think is most interesting about this playtest packet is this first bit right here, this creating your character section. It says at first level, you choose whether your character is a member of the human race or one of the game's fantastical races. Alternatively, you can choose one of the following lineages. If you choose a lineage, you might have once been a member of another race, but you aren't any longer. You now possess only your lineage's racial trait. That is super cool. When you create a character using a lineage option here, follow these additional rules during character creation. Now, this is something that, as far as I'm aware, completely new to 5th edition, this idea that you can be multiracial in a sense, in that you could have started out as a dwarf mechanically, and now you are something else mechanically. So with the ability score increase here, you get to choose 2 and 1, much like was presented in the character options for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And I said in my review of that book that I think this is the way that Dungeons and Dragons is going to go, and they have said that in this document. They say this and future publications are going to follow this method. So instead of having set character ability score bonuses, now you can choose to increase 2 different attributes by +2 and +1. Again, similarly with languages, there's no more prescriptive languages. You just choose common and one other that makes sense for you and the DM to agree on. Again, this is part of that thing of them broadening the ancestry options in the game and allowing you to create more interesting and diverse characters. Now here's where we get to one of the most interesting things about this, I think. The creature types. Now it says every creature in D&D, including every player character, has a special tag in the rules that identifies it as a type of creature they are. Most of the player characters are the humanoid, and a race option presented here tells you what the character's type is. Now several of these are humanoid and another creature type, which is something I've not seen before and is something brand new to 5th edition, I believe. Now it says here in the having more than one type section, some creatures are of more than one creature type. If an effect works on at least one of the creature types, that effect can work on that creature. For example, if you are both a humanoid and an undead, Cure Wounds works on you since the spell works on humanoids. Now this is a really cool feature. It allows a lot of interesting character types, which we're going to dive into here with this Unearthed Arcana material, but it also adds a lot of scope in the future for kind of blending races. And I think that's going to be a big thing as we move forward with 5th edition and eventually get into 6th edition. I think that the standard race model will be gone, and what we're going to be left with is a kind of pick-a-mix option of you choose different elements from different ancestries, from different cultural backgrounds, from different physical traits, and kind of build your character like that, rather than going, oh, I'm going to be a dwarf, here are the options I get. You say, right, I want to be a small creature, I want to be this creature type, I want to have this language, this ability score, and then all of the traditional races that have existed up until now will be templates that kind of give you pre-made versions of those backgrounds and lineages and ancestries. So there's a note here that just says, again, that these changes follow on from the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything changes, and it says, finally, going forward, the term race in D&D refers only to the suite of game features used by player characters. Said features don't have any bearing on monsters and NPCs who are members of the same species or lineages, since monsters and NPCs in D&D don't rely on race or class to function. Moreover, the DMs are empowered to customize the features or creatures in their games as they wish. So they're really moving away from that kind of standard race model that they've been using for 5 editions now, and moving towards something much more broad. Okay, so let's dive into the actual creature types here, and we're going to start off with the Dampier. Now, the Dampier traditionally are kind of half vampire-like creatures. I really like the Dampier. One of my players in my Pathfinder game was playing a Dampier. It was a lot of fun. So it says, Dampier, poised between the worlds of the living and the dead, Dampiers retain their grip on life, yet are endlessly tested by vicious hungers. This is very in keeping with the traditional sense of the Dampier. They are kind of a half undead. They have a lot of the drawbacks of undead, but a lot of the benefits of being a living creature. So the first rule here is the Dampier hunger. Every Dampier knows the thirst slacked only by the living. This desire is a whisper in the mind, a tinge to the sight, a reflex constantly needing to be suppressed. And it goes on to give a list of different hungers, which is really cool. I think in previous editions, Dampier were only interested in blood, but the 8 options we get here are really quite flavorful, like blood, flesh and raw meat. Those two are kind of your standard vampire and half vampire desires, but cerebral and spinal fluid, that's really gothic. Esoteric humors is really evocative. Psychic energy, a color from one's appearance, dreams, or just life energy. I really like the idea that you can craft a Dampier that isn't just a blood-sucking monster and that kind of feeds on psychic energies around them. That's a really cool option. Then we've got a table here for Dampiric origins. So you are a reincarnation of an ancestor who is a vampiric tyrant. You're a diminished manifestation of an otherworldly being. Slacking your hunger hastens your renewal, all that good stuff. And then we get onto the traits. So this is where things start to get interesting, I think, in terms of the potential for future race options and ancestry options and background options for Dungeons and Dragons. So the type is humanoid and undead. So like I said before, the 2 creature types, anything that works on one will work on this creature, on this character. And then we have the size, medium or small. Now, to my knowledge, this is the first time we've been able to choose our size at character creation. Again, that leans into this kind of pick a mix style character creation that I think we're going to see a lot more of in the future. Speed 35 feet, that's pretty standard. They are quite fast, typically in kind of the lore, the Dampier. They get dark vision, which is basically expected at this point in 5e. And then they get spider climb. You have a climbing speed equal to your walking speed. In addition, at 3rd level, you can move up, down, and across vertical surfaces and upside down along ceilings while leaving your hands free. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this. I like the climbing idea, but the hands-free element, they're just walking on the walls and then upside down with your hands kind of dangling. It's very Hammer horror, it's very Stoker, it's very classic, but it doesn't kind of elicit that visceral feel that I think kind of scrambling on all fours does. It's certainly more beneficial mechanically though. Then we get Vampiric Bite. Your fanged bite is a natural weapon, which counts as a simple melee weapon. Your bite deals 1d4 piercing damage on a hit while you're missing half or more of your hit points. You have the advantage on attack rolls you make with a bite. When you use your bite and hit a creature that isn't a construct or undead, you can empower yourself in one of the following ways of your choice. Regain hit points equal to the damage dealt by the bite, or gain a bonus to the next ability check or attack roll you make. The bonus equals the damage dealt by the bite. Now this is, again, one of the things that the Dampier typically had in previous editions. They could drain the blood of their victims and regain some temporary hit points or regain a little bit of healing. But I do like how they've added this as gain hit points equal to the damage or gain an ability bonus. So if you're already at full HP, previously there wouldn't be a lot of reason to use your Vampiric Bite. But if you can give yourself some bonuses to ability checks or attack rolls, it might be worthwhile biting a creature and being mechanically disadvantaged rather than doing damage for a turn, so that you can make sure you hit it in the next round. And you can empower yourself with your bite a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now this is pretty standard. I think that they've been moving towards this tie-in more and more abilities to the proficiency bonus as they go along rather than to specific ability scores. And I think again that kind of ties into this idea that they want to divorce ability score bonuses from the wider context of the game. So a lot of older abilities used to tie into, say, your constitution bonus or your wisdom bonus. So now it's your proficiency bonus, so it applies pretty universally and you're not forced to take a good wisdom or a good constitution to get those benefits, which is really cool. Next up, we have the Hexblood. Now, the Hexblood are creatures formed from hags or from entering into bargains with hags. One of the ways that hags create more of their kind is through the creation of hexbloods. Every hexblood exhibits features suggestive of the hag whose magic inspired their powers. This includes an unusual crown, often called the Elder Cross or Witch's Turn. This living garland-like part of the hexblood's body extends from their temples and wraps around their head, serving as a visual mark for the bargain between the hag and the hexblood, a debt owed or a change to come. Now this is really cool. I really like hags. I think that hags have got a lot of juicy mythology surrounding them and can make really great villains in D&D. So getting an ancestry kind of tied to that is really cool. And I really like that there's this kind of standout box here that says becoming a hag. Hags can undertake a ritual to irreversibly transform a hexblood they created into a new hag, either one of their own kind or that embodies the hexblood's nature. This requires that both the hag and the hexblood be in the same place and consent to the lengthy ritual, circumstances most hexbloods shun, but might come to accept over the course of centuries. Once a hexblood undergoes this irreversible ritual, they emerge as a hag NPC no longer under control of the hexblood's player unless the DM rules otherwise. This is really cool because it gives kind of an immediate arc idea to a character. Maybe they're on the run because the hag that is responsible for their birthing wants to turn them into a hag and is kind of trying to whittle away at them and get them to agree to this, and they're kind of on the run and that's why they're out in the world adventuring. Or maybe they're trying to find the hag so that they can become one. Lots of juicy possibilities there. And then we've got some tables. We've got one for the Hexblood origins, so what deal was struck with a hag. So seeking a child, your parent made a bargain with a hag, you're the result of that arrangement. Or you began life as a fey creature, but an accident or crime changed you and forced you from your home. So just some ideas for how you may have started in life. And then we've got the Hexblood traits. So type, again, a double typed creature, a fey and a humanoid. So anything that applies to fey or humanoid is going to apply to this character. Again, medium or small. I really like that there's this choice now because it gives you the freedom to really make the kinds of character that you want to make. And then speed, 30 feet, dark vision, again, really standard stuff. And then Fey resilience, you have advantage on saving throws you make to avoid or end charm condition on yourself. That's pretty common for Fey creatures. And then Hex magic, this is really cool. You can disguise yourself or cast Hex-based spells with a trait. You can choose intelligence, wisdom, or charisma as your spellcasting ability for this. Again, this really hammers home how much emphasis they're putting on this kind of a la carte creation system now. They're not prescribing any ability scores even to magic. They're saying as long as you're using one of these mental stats, you're fine. You can use whichever one you want. And you can cast these spells using any spell slots you have. Then you've got magic token. This is probably my favourite part of the Hexblood. As an action, you can harmlessly pull out one of your nails, a tooth, or a lock of hair. This token is imbued with magic until you finish a long rest. While the token is imbued in this way, you can use an action to send a telepathic message to a creature holding or carrying the token, so long as they're on the same plane of existence and within 10 miles of you. The message can contain up to 25 words, so you get a sending spell that you can use that's based on a bit of yourself. I love the idea of this really creepy Hexblood just kind of like pulling out a nail and being like, hang on to this, I'll call you. It's a really creepy and just gross idea that really fits well into this Gothic Lineages system. In addition, while you're within 10 miles of the token, you can use an action to enter a trance for 1 minute, during which time you can see and hear stuff and you're through the location that you've given the token to, which is really cool. And then once you've used this feature, you can't do so again until you finish the long rest, at which point your missing part regrows. Really like that. That's really cool. There's a lot of scope there for doing really cool things. Mixing a Hexblood and a Warlock seems like a really logical kind of combination. A Hexblood Hexblade is worth it just for the name alone. But I especially like that magic token. That's definitely my favourite thing with the Hexblood. And then finally we come to the Reborn. Death isn't always the end. The Reborn exemplify this, being individuals who've died yet somehow still live. These are essentially the returned from the Theros book, And in my review of that book, I said how frustrated I was that the Returned didn't get to be a playable race, because they're a really evocative kind of being, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff that goes on with their backstory here, and I'm really glad to see a lot of that brought into the Reborn. So they get faded memories, so they can remember elements of their past life. They have memories of events before whatever happened to them, whatever caused them to die, and then rather than sleeping, Reborn regularly sit and dwell on the past. So there's a lot of kind of emphasis on past lives here with the Reborn, and that's always a really juicy motivator for any kind of character, I think. And it gives you a table of what their lost memories are, so a D8 table of different memories that you might come up with. And then you get a table of their origins as well, so you're magically resurrected but something went wrong, or your body hosts a possessing spirit that shares its memories and replaces your missing appendages with phantasmal limbs. This would work really well for a lot of different character types. Actually, one of the characters in my current campaign would work really well with the Reborn. They are a reborn creature who's lived multiple lives and is kind of on a quest to discover their past lives, so this would work really well with that. So in terms of traits, they are humanoid as well as construct or undead, so again, even more choice here. You get humanoid and a second option, but you get to choose what that second option is. Then there's small or medium creatures, which you choose when you gain the lineage, 30 feet speed, dark vision standard, and then they get deathless nature. You've escaped death, a fact represented by the following benefits. You have advantage on saving throws against disease and being poisoned, and you have resistance to poison damage, always handy. You have advantage on death saving throws. This is a massive deal because death saving throws are how you live or die, so having advantage on that is a huge thing. You don't need to eat, breathe, or drink. That's pretty standard for undead and constructs. And you don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. And when you finish a long rest in 4 hours, you spend those hours in active, motionless state, during which time you retain consciousness, so like the elven trance. And then finally, we have knowledge from a past life. You temporarily remember sporadic glimpses of the past, perhaps faded memories from ages ago or previous life. When you make an ability check that uses a skill, you can roll a d6 and add the number rolled to the check. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. There's that proficiency bonus again. And you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Overall, really cool. I really like the Reborn. I like the deathless nature. I think advantage on death saving throws is a massive deal. And I think knowledge from a past life is a really cool way to kind of mechanically tie in that ancestral memory they've got going on. Overall, I really like these new lineages. I think that they are really evocative. I think they are quite different to a lot of things we've had in the past. And most importantly, they really kind of outline where Dungeons and Dragons is going in the future. This kind of broad aspect where you can pick lots of different options to do with your background, your race, your lineage, and you're much less prescribed into one path. But I'd really love to know what you think about that and what you think about these changes. Will you be sad to see the kind of classic race system of being an elf who gets plus to their dexterity and all that kind of stuff go away and become more of a template-y thing, as I imagine it will be? Or are you really excited to mix and match and be an undead dwarf or be a reborn who was once a minotaur or anything like that? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like because it helps tell the algorithm that these videos are worthy, and I will see you in the next video. But until then, happy gaming.